Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, September 6th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Rescue efforts are still underway at the site of the sudden collapse yesterday of a car park under construction in North Tel Aviv. IBA's Elon Aslan-Levy visited the site this morning and followed this report.
I'm here in Tel Aviv in Ramat HaChayal on the corner of HaBarzel and HaNechoshet streets, where yesterday at 11:23 in the morning, a multi-story subterranean car park in the final stages of construction collapsed, trapping workers underneath the rubble. So far, we know that 3 workers were killed in the tragedy. Search and rescue teams have reason to believe that 3 workers are still trapped under the rubble and are hopeful from experience that they might still be alive.
We haven't contacted them. We contact their cell phones, and the last person that we not rescued, that we got out from the ruin was found by this way. We hope that we will find the other 3 by the same way.
What efforts are being made at the moment in order to rescue those still trapped?
Over 200 search and rescue responders, huge machines and other technologies are now in the site. We are working from both sides, from above, from beyond, from the sides, trying to earn the expensive hours that are so important for them to keep them alive.
At what point do rescue teams give up on hope of finding people alive under the rubble?
We do not give up until we see the last floor.
While the dramatic collapse of a building in North Tel Aviv is certainly unusual, the death of construction workers in Israel, unfortunately, is not. In May, the OECD published figures that showed workplace fatalities in Israel are double that of the European average, with 480 workplace construction casualties between 2000 and 2015. Political attention is already beginning to pile in on the question of construction accidents, and now there is hope that when the final people, whether alive or dead, are recovered from under the rubble, serious introspection will begin to ensure that such a tragedy can never happen again in Israel.
We should clarify at this point that it's not exactly clear how many people remain under the rubble. The Home Front's command says that 3 workers are still trapped, and Israel police say that 4 workers have yet to be found. The Knesset Welfare Committee convened an emergency session this afternoon to discuss the spate of work accidents and collapse of the Tel Aviv parking garage. Welfare Minister Chaim Katz summoned the heads of the Safety and Work Welfare Administration to discuss ways to step up enforcement of building laws and punishment for developers and contractors who violate regulations. Opposition Knesset member Dov Chanin of the Joint List has been closely following the issue of worker accidents. Earlier today, I spoke to him, and he warned the writing was on the walls.
Unfortunately, it is not a surprise. It was written on the wall. Because, as you know, in Israel, there are only 17 inspectors in the whole state of Israel on many, many thousands of building sites. And the number of building sites that each inspector should inspect is more than 700. Therefore, we have to say that there is no inspection, there is no real inspection of building industry in Israel. That is the reason why, each year, tens of workers are being killed in building sites. The disaster we had this week in Ramat HaChayal in Tel Aviv is not the first, incident of deaths and injuries in building sites in Israel.
Well, maybe after something like this, something could change. Public pressure could cause something to change, no?
I do hope that public pressure will cause some change, but I have to tell you very frankly that I'm really not an optimist on this.
Do you think that there is a possible place here for a state commission of inquiry, and do you think there'd be a benefit to something like that?
Yes, I put this demand to have an official inquiry committee. I think this is a step that can strengthen our demands for a big change that is needed in the attitude of Israeli government to the whole issue of security in building sites in Israel.
Well, let's hope that this tragic incident may spur something to improve in that area. Thanks, Knesset member Dov Chanin, for joining IBA News. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the collapse site last night and praised the rescue efforts by Homefront Command to locate those still trapped under the debris. He vowed that every effort would be made to rescue the survivors and no one would be left behind. The Prime Minister also commented on the tragedy before jetting off this morning for an official visit to the Netherlands, saying he would closely follow developments there while on his two-day visit. IBA's diplomatic reporter Kalev Ben David is here in the studio with all the details on the Prime Minister's latest diplomatic initiative in Europe. Kalev?
Thanks, Aryeh. Prime Minister Netanyahu arrived in The Hague this afternoon for meetings with Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, with members of the Dutch Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee, and his first encounter with King of the Netherlands, Willem-Alexander. Upon boarding the plane, Netanyahu said that in his discussions he will stress Israel's role as the most stable nation in the Middle East and its vital contribution to fighting the spread of radical Islamic terror. It is this understanding that we are working to install gradually in European countries, Netanyahu said. Dutch Prime Minister Rutte is viewed in Jerusalem as one of the most pro-Israel leaders in Western Europe, despite the fact that groups who advocate boycotting Israel have in the past received some funding from the Netherlands. The Dutch could be helpful to Netanyahu in derailing the French peace initiative that has been rejected by Israel and supporting alternative diplomatic efforts more acceptable to Jerusalem. One of those possibilities, a Russian-backed summit in Moscow between Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, was discussed yesterday in Jerusalem in a meeting the Prime Minister held with Mikhail Bogdanov, Russian President Vladimir Putin's special envoy to the Middle East. Netanyahu told Bogdanov he is ready to meet with Abbas at any time and any place without preconditions. The Russian media outlet Interfax later quoted the Palestinian envoy to Moscow as saying Abbas had agreed to Putin's proposal to meet with Netanyahu. Abbas told reporters today during a visit to Poland that he was ready to meet Netanyahu this Friday as Putin had suggested, but it was Israel that requested putting it off to another date. Other Palestinian officials say Abbas's agreement to meet Netanyahu is still contingent on Israel freezing all settlement construction and releasing more Palestinian prisoners. Preconditions, the Prime Minister says, are unacceptable. Aryeh?
Well, Kalev, why is the Prime Minister really making this visit to the Netherlands now? What does he hope to get from it?
Aryeh, the Prime Minister clearly does see an opening or an opportunity in Europe to perhaps build Israel's relations on firmer footing there, because against the backdrop of the spread of radical Islamic terror in Europe, maybe putting Europe in the same boat that Israel has been in for a number of years. Another factor, clearly the Prime Minister is concerned about diplomatic initiatives toward the end of this year, especially after the November election in the United States, that could involve either the French peace initiative, it could involve a new resolution at the Permanent Security Council at the United Nations, perhaps trying to force Israel to table or setting the parameters. So clearly the Prime Minister is trying to preempt those efforts, making his own effort.
Kalev, is there any chance of this summit taking place in Moscow, and why is Russia pushing so hard for it?
Well, obviously, Putin wants to make it clear that it is Russia today and not the United States that is the dominant outside player in the Middle East. And it's equally clear that neither Prime Minister Netanyahu nor President Abbas wants to disappoint Putin, so they're working hard to put the blame on each other. I think at this stage it looks unlikely because we're back to that basic issue. The Prime Minister says no preconditions. Abbas says you have to free settlements and free prisoners. If Netanyahu would agree to those conditions, I'm sure his government would collapse. And if Abbas were to backtrack now when he's facing local elections against Hamas, it would hurt him domestically, politically. So it really doesn't seem likely right now.
Okay, Kalev, thanks a lot for your insight. Security forces foiled an attempted stabbing attack this morning in the Old City. A 24-year-old female terrorist who was detained after she acted suspiciously near one of the gates. Border police officers checked her bag and found a knife stashed inside. The woman was taken for questioning, and she admitted she arrived in the area to carry out a stabbing attack. Police said this woman has in the past been convicted 3 times for similar offenses. She will be brought before the Jerusalem's magistrates to decide on the continuation of her remand. Palestinian gunmen fired shots at an IDF patrol operating along the security fence near the southern border of the Gaza Strip overnight. No soldiers were hurt. The troops returned fire at 2 Hamas positions inside the strip. Palestinian sources said damage was caused to a Hamas training site near Beit Lahia, and this was the second such incident in recent days. And Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has approved a list of goodwill measures for Palestinians ahead of the upcoming Muslim holiday of alAdha, which is marked next week. As part of the temporary easing of restrictions, some 100,000 Palestinian families in the West Bank will be permitted to visit families in Israel. Married Muslim men over the age of 45 and Muslim women over the age of 30 will be permitted to pray at the Temple Mount. Operation hours at the border crossings will be extended, and hundreds of Gaza residents will be permitted to travel through Israel to the Allenby crossing in the West Bank into Jordan to visit family members. Turning to the alleged corruption affair in the city of Netanya, the Rishon LeZion Magistrates Court today extended the remand of 4 suspects involved in the case. The group is suspected of taking bribes for over a decade to the tune of billions of shekels. Allegations include possible real estate transactions worth millions, bribery, fraud, money laundering, and tax offenses. On Monday, police raided offices of the Netanya municipality and confiscated documents. Senior officials at City Hall, including Netanya Mayor Miriam Freiberg-Ikar, are also expected to be questioned under caution. Evidence collected so far raises suspicion that the mayor and her family may be involved in the affair on some level. The remand of Salman Amer, the head of the predominantly Druze local council of Julis in the Western Galilee, has been extended by 8 days. Amer allegedly shot and killed a 45-year-old contractor who apparently tried to attack him outside City Hall Monday morning. Eyewitnesses said the victim attacked Amer with an axe. The council head allegedly fired in self-defense after the two clashed at the plaza of the municipal building. Amer initially fled the scene, but turned himself into authorities shortly afterwards, claiming he had acted in self-defense. Turning to the U.S. elections, but with the local angle. Israeli supporters of Republican candidate Donald Trump have opened a campaign office in the Sumerian settlement of Karnei Shomron in a bid to get as many expatriates as possible to cast absentee ballots for their candidate. This is the 4th such office to open in Israel in recent months. There are an estimated 300,000 U.S. citizens living in Israel, with nearly 80,000 of them living in the West Bank, although it's not quite clear how many of them are eligible to vote. An 80-year-old rabbi from Illinois is slated to host a voter registration drive in his living room, and similar campaign headquarters have already been launched in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and the community of Efrat. Members insist they are not making a political statement by opening an office in the West Bank, and that the funds for the headquarters were independently raised and did not come from sources in the Republican Party.
So I just want to make it very clear that every dime, every agura that we have raised for this effort thus far has come from sources here in Israel, not from the Republican Party and not from the Trump campaign. Now there's a second side to the answer, and that is we are in coordination with them. We are in touch with them on a daily basis.
This is not a political message or a symbol of any kind, but we are saying loud and clear that we will get to any American voter that want to vote in Israel and to want us to help him to act on his civilian duty and democratic right. And our message stay the same. Do the registration right now, because otherwise you can't vote later.
The 13th annual Jerusalem Wine Festival opened its doors last night in the Sculpture Garden of the Israel Museum. Running every night till Thursday inclusive, it offers unlimited tastings from Israel's best wineries. IBA's Elon Aslan Levy visited last night to uncork the secrets of how Israeli wine became so good.
The first the compliment is to Golan Heights Winery that created the revolution of the quality wines in Israel. A decade after Golan Heights, the boutique wineries came, which took it one step forward, the qualities. And now, thanks God, we are in the qualities like the leading wine industries in the world, like France and Spain and Italy and so and so.
Is the quality of Israeli wine thanks to the special climate and soil in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. The Mediterranean climate is perfect to vines, especially in Europe you can have one harvest bed and the second will be great. In Israel it's almost the same. It's always hot, always sunny, and the vines like sun and hot, so it's perfect.
Without asking you to give away any industry secrets, what is the secret to good winemaking?
To be honest, patient. To be patient and lots of knowledge. To be patient and to improve yourself each year and not to be, with self-confidence that you're the best. Always to learn, to be patient, and then you have good wines.
L'chaim.
Well, for those of you who can't make it to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv is hosting its own wine festival. The Salot Israel 2016 Wine Festival opens tomorrow at the Tachana compound for 2 nights only. L'chaim. And in local money matters, shares were mixed on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and the shekel was also mixed in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. Turning to the weather, and the forecast calls for partly cloudy skies with no real change in temperatures. Here are the afternoon highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That's all for today. Please join us again tomorrow when Elon Hassan Levy will be at this desk to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Ari O'Sullivan wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.